Hey guys, welcome back. And the free agency, or the trade deadline, I should say, period is over. There are now no longer able to be any trades. And we're going to be going through who I think are the 5 big winners of the deadline and the 5 big losers of the deadline. Teams that really let me down this deadline. If you guys enjoy this video, be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you are new. We're getting close to 1,100 subscribers, which is absolutely huge. So if you guys do enjoy this one, hit that notification bell so you never miss out on a video. We'll be doing a post-trade deadline 2-round mock draft tomorrow with a very special guest. So stay tuned for that one. Pretty uneventful trade deadline, if I do say so myself. But there were some moves I liked, so we're going to go ahead and get into it with the move I liked most, and that was Chase Young headed to the San Francisco 49ers. Chase Young's had a really, really solid year for the Commanders. He's getting his step back. He's quick, and he's getting into the quarterback's backfield pretty often. This is a 49ers team that desperately needed to make a move. Nick Bosa's been good, but they have not been able to create pressure at nearly the same rate they were able to last year. They brought in Javon Hargrave. They brought in Arik Armstead still here, but this team hasn't been able to create pressure the way we thought they were going to be able to. And you go out and get Chase Young, and this front four is elite with Chase Young, Javon Hargrave, Arik Armstead, and Nick Bosa. That is an elite group right there for the Washington Commanders. I think it's going to be a really good team moving forward. Now, I would have liked to see the Niners go out and address that cornerback. There were a lot of talks about Jalen Johnson. He didn't get moved, which we'll get into that in a little bit. I think the Bears messed up that one. But yeah, I think the 49ers are the biggest winners of the deadline. You got a young player who is due a contract. So even if it's a rental for this year, you only gave up a 3rd-round pick. Again, we'll get to what the Bears did. Didn't like that. But you gave up a 3rd-round pick for a young guy on a really good rookie contract still. You'll see if you can extend him next year. But I think this is a really, really solid move for the Niners, and it puts them right back into that NFC contender status. A loser for me is Devonte Adams. Poor Devonte, man. Just a really rough 24 hours. And we heard Adam Schefter say not a chance in hell that they were going to trade him. And so you didn't expect him to get moved. He's still a loser, though, because he has to deal with this Raiders team and Jimmy Garoppolo for the rest of the year. He is one of the most talented receivers in football. There were a number of teams, Buffalo, San Francisco, Jacksonville, that I think he would have been incredible on. Kansas City even. But he's got to spend more time with Jimmy Garoppolo. The Raiders as a team, I think, are a loser. They didn't do anything. They could have traded Josh Jacobs, Divine Diablo, Devonte Adams. They did absolutely nothing. They are kind of still tied down to this Devonte Adams thing. There's just so many weird routes that this team's going to need to figure out what they're going to do moving forward. But I think Devonte Adams is a big loser. He should be out of there. He should be playing for a contender. And instead, he's got to deal with this for the rest of the season. So sorry to Devonte Adams. We're going to move on to my next winner, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles. And they went out and they traded for Kevin Byard. This deal looks better and better with all the deals we saw today because they got an absolute steal for him. I believe they gave up a 5th-round pick for Kevin Byard, one of the top safeties in football, and that filled a huge need. Now, I would have liked to see the Eagles go out and get linebacker, but you went out and you got Kevin Byard from the Titans. You stole another player from the Titans. Don't think he played last week against the Commanders, but he should be making his season debut next week. He is a really, really good piece. You gave up basically nothing to get him, and he's going to help this team contend. They needed help on the back end after losing C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps. You had Reed Blankenship playing back there. He was playing well, but you needed another safety because Terrell Edmonds isn't the guy. And they went out and they got Kevin freaking Byard. Absolute finesse by Howie Roseman. Absolutely love this move, and the Eagles are a big winner for me. We talked about the Niners. We talked about the Eagles. We got to talk about the Cowboys as a big loser. They stood pat and they did nothing. They could have added another receiver. They could have added a corner. They could have added another linebacker. There's a number of holes in this Cowboys roster that I think they could have looked to address. And Jerry just sat down and did absolutely nothing, which I absolutely hate for them. The NFC got better. The Seahawks got better. The Lions got better. The 49ers and Eagles got better. And your team is not good enough. You had a great win against the Rams. Hooray. You beat up Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams. When this team is forced to play good teams, the Cowboys have looked terrible all year long. and they needed to go make a move. You have Trayvon Diggs banged up, go get Jalen Johnson. Go get Pat Surtain. Go make a move for a superstar that can help this team win now, because this team has so much talent. They should be able to contend. Michael Gallup is not a good enough receiver. Go get Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton. They just stood pat and did nothing, and I'm disappointed because this team has all the potential in the world to make that Super Bowl push, but standing pat and doing nothing is not going to help your team get anywhere. So they're a big loser for me from this deadline. A winner for me was a smaller trade, and that's Ezra Cleveland going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars just improved their offensive line a little bit. They get a guard that's going to play on the opposite side of Brandon Sheriff, which I think is really solid. This is an offensive line unit that isn't incredible, and Ezra Cleveland is not an incredible player. But for the price of a 6th-round pick, yeah, you make that deal 10 times out of 10. He's going to be a huge addition to this offensive line. A Jaguars team that I think I had at 4 in my power rankings. They're on fire right now. I don't really see a route where they just continue to lose games. Fairly easy schedule, easy division, and now you've got offensive line to protect Trevor Lawrence, open up run lanes for Travis Etienne. I really, really like this move for the Jaguars. I think this is a move that's going to help them. Like I said, Ezra Cleveland is not a superstar player, but he is going to help this team win football games. He's going to help keep your quarterback protected. So for that, you're a winner in my eyes. Another loser for me, and that is going to be the Washington Commanders. Oh, man. Washington, I think they blew an opportunity here. Because if you're going to blow it up, blow it all the way up. We heard Jonathan Allen and Terry McLaurin in trade rumors. They're both still on the team. I'm not too mad at that. What I am mad about is what you got back. You got a 2nd-round pick for Montez Sweat, which is an absolute steal. You got a 3rd-round pick for Chase Young. You got a 2nd and a 3rd, and that's it for your arguably 2 of your best players on your entire team. That is not it. Josh Harris has traded James Harden, Chase Young, and Montez Sweat in the last 24 hours. And the Commanders are going into a rebuild. It definitely is starting to look that way. A 2nd-round pick for Montez Sweat's an absolute steal. A 3rd for Chase Young, though, I think this team could have gotten an early 2nd for him, maybe even a late 1st if we saw Montez Sweat go for a 2nd. I think Chase Young is a better player than Montez Sweat. Obviously, I think the injury history is why he went for less, but just don't understand the direction of the Commanders because they have some pieces there in Chase Young and Jonathan Allen, Terry McLaurin, that I think could be really good trade pieces. Even Kendall Fuller, who I believe is on an expiring contract, all would have been really good to move. And they just were like, well, we're just going to move 2 edge rushers. Your edge rush and pass rush is going to be terrible now. I don't love it. I don't love it at all for Washington, and they're a loser for me. Another winner for me is Will Levis. This one's a little bit interesting because Will Levis had an incredible game against the Atlanta Falcons this week. And there were rumors that they were going to trade Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins, and they didn't. He still has his weapons, and I think that's really good for Will Levis because you get a young quarterback to keep his weapons around. I think you could have also thrown the Broncos in here. I'll kind of talk about that for a second. You keep your weapons. That's a team that has some momentum all of a sudden with some good pieces on their roster. And I'm not ready to write off the Broncos. The Titans going up against a Pittsburgh team this week, which is going to be an interesting one. But Will Levis gets to keep his number 1 receiver and one of the best running backs in the league that are going to really help take the pressure off of them. And I think that's a huge win for Will Levis and the Titans. So they moved Byard for a terrible price, but they were able to keep some of their other guys. And I think Will Levis is a winner because of it. Another loser for me are the Buffalo Bills. This deal, I was like, oh, I was doing a live reaction to this. I was like, oh, they got Rasul Douglas. And then I'm watching the details come in. I'm like, they gave up a 3rd for Rasul Douglas. Now, I'm not saying Rasul Douglas is a bad player, but so far this season, through about halfway, he's allowed 4 touchdowns and 296 yards. You should not be giving up a 3rd-round pick. They get a 5th-round pick back, so I don't hate it. Packers get a 3rd-rounder, which is really solid, but the Packers could be a winner in this. But I get the Bills need a secondary because their secondary is banged up. You could have given that 3rd up for a number of other guys, but you gave it up for Rasul Douglas, who isn't like a young guy on a rookie contract. He's a bit older, and you gave up a 3rd-round pick for him, and he's not even having all that great of a season. I get he's like a leader for the Packers and all that, but just really, really confused by the Bills making this move. for a third-round pick. Just didn't like it for Buffalo, and they're a loser because of that price. A winner for me are the New York Giants. You gave up Leonard Williams, which is a tough loss for them, a good interior pass rusher, but you got a second-round pick back. This is a Giants team that needs receiver, offensive line, maybe even quarterback. And now you have 3 pretty prime picks to where you can go make that move. I think this was a great move. Now, they did have to take on some of the contracts, but for the price, they get a second, and I believe they get a 5th in 2025. Really good trade for the Giants. I think they did an excellent job at making this move. I think this is going to help the Giants down the road. So I got the Giants as a winner, and we talked about it. I think that the Chicago Bears are a loser of the trade deadline. I hate the Montez Sweat trade. I tried to talk myself into it. Okay, well, they needed an edge rusher. They were just going to draft one with that pick anyways. Here's the problem. You gave up a second-round pick, and you're going to have to give him a new contract. So that's one thing. And then my saving grace was, okay, so they gave up the second. They're just going to replace the second with Jalen Johnson, who doesn't want to be there anyways. But no, Jalen Johnson was not traded. They overpaid for Montez Sweat. If we saw Chase Young go for a third, Montez Sweat should not have gone for more than that. They give up number 35, and this is the second year in a row where Ryan Poles is giving up a real valuable draft capital for a player that's an impending free agent. They can franchise tag him. I get all that, but they should have just waited. Montez Sweat could have come available. You could have signed him in the offseason, kept your pick, and then kind of double dipped there. But now you only get Montez Sweat. That pick could be really valuable. They could suck the rest of the season again and have the number 33 overall pick, which goes to Washington, which is a prime pick for Washington if they want to trade back into the first round. It doesn't make sense to me if I'm Chicago, and I really don't like what they did this deadline. They kept Darnell Mooney, which I think they should have moved on from him as well. Jalen Johnson's still there, and I think they overpaid for Montez Sweat. So the Bears are a loser of this deadline for me. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know, who do you guys think is a big winner and loser of this trade deadline? Let me know down in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.